Hello, my friends. Welcome back to A Common Touch of Fantasy. My name is Paul, and today we are covering Uncanny Magazine issue number 24, the September-October issue, the Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction issue. And if you haven't read any Uncanny this year, this is probably the issue to read. It was amazing. It was fantastic. So buckle in. Let's talk about these stories. This might be a long one, but I really did like this issue. The first story is The House on the Moon by William Alexander. I did a separate review of this story because I liked it a lot. Basically, they're creating a castle on the moon, and this 8th grade class is visiting this castle, and this one girl wants to go and explore and stuff. Really cool story. I believe William Alexander is mostly a juvenile fictional writer, so that really comes through in this story. I really like that. And the girl with her disability, she has to use a cane. She's not as impaired on the moon because of the less gravity. And that's a very common theme in all of these stories, that space is actually opening up the ability for these individuals to live a more normal life because of the lack of gravity, which is really cool. Moving on, we got Birthday Girl by Rachel Swirsky. This is a story about this aunt visiting her relatives, her niece, and her sister. Now, the sister of the niece blames the aunt for the neurodiversity that her daughter has. The daughter has Tourette's and bipolar. The aunt actually carried her niece in the womb. They used her egg, so there's this tension in the family. They had this big fight a year ago when something bad happened, and now they're coming to terms with that and just trying to figure out their emotions about the whole issue. And this was really good. It really wants to push a more positive look on neurodiversity and say, hey, look, these individuals are people too. They're not crazy individuals. They're just individuals with a different challenge. All right, it was pretty good. An open letter to the family by Jennifer Brozek. This story is a story about an individual in space, and she has to decide what she wants to do with her pain tolerance and her disability. She has really excruciating pain in her legs. Her legs aren't even usable. And in space, that doesn't really matter. So she's deciding to amputate her legs, and she's writing this letter to her family back home and telling them, hey, this is my decision. I'm okay with this decision. And the only thing stopping me is letting you guys know and letting you guys get past the idea of me purposely doing this to my body, because this is what I want. And it's really cool. I really like that one. Heavy Lifting by A.T. Greenblatt. So these robots are missing from this storage house, this warehouse, and we have these people that are trying to investigate it. What is happening? Why are these robots running away? Why is someone stealing them? And the disability in this is the woman that works as a hacker / computer tech behind the scenes, and I believe she was in a wheelchair, and it just shows how competent someone can be in that capacity, which is fantastic. But this was really good. I liked it a lot as well. A lot of these I gave 4 or 3 stars to, and yeah, I liked quite a few of these. So Merc, Rustad, they are one of my favorite writers with short stories, and The Frequency of Compassion was great. I loved it. Rustad is a non-binary author, and they write just really imaginative stories. In this one, it is a first contact story. This individual is on the moon, and her disability is she is hyper empathetic towards people, and so she meets this alien being that only talks through telepathy. So we have a hyper empathetic human talking to a person that can only talk through telepathy, and Yeah, so that is very challenging, but it was fantastic. Really liked that one a lot. Rustad's writing is just fantastic. Um, the Stars Above by Katharine Duckett. Oh, this was so good too, and everything was pretty good on this issue. So it's Kyrgyzstan. These people are nomads. They're traveling from place to place because they don't want to be uh, captured by the aliens that have now invaded Earth. So they're trying to like dodge them and move around and stuff. But it's about people living a normal life during these extreme circumstances. And this it talks about this boy that is has feelings for this other boy, and it's just it makes you realize that no matter how awful things are going on out in the world, the small things in life, the things that we all take pleasure in, and identify as us being human, those things will still happen, and we still have to take time for those things, even if everything around us is falling apart. Nisi Shawl, The Things I Missed the Most. This was a story about a girl that was had issues with seizures, and they put this device in her head, and when they put this device in her head, she then saw this imaginary friend that was more imaginary than like a normal imaginary friend, but of course it still was an imaginary friend, but she actually has like a relationship kind of with this imaginary friend, and they end up like taking the device out because she ends up being cured, and she doesn't like that. Like, she then misses her imaginary friend, and this was a really thought-provoking story. It's one that I might read again in the future. Wasn't my favorite, but I still liked it. Abigail Dreams of Weather by Stu West. So this is like an 80s kids breaking out type story. Reminds me of like the babysitter club thing. I don't know what it is, where they like the babysitter babysits the kids, and they all like go to a restaurant and stuff, and the one baby's crawling on the roof somewhere. Anyways, that's enough 80s nostalgia for now. But all these kids are in this hospital, and from the different clues, I believe it's like a cancer hospital for kids, and they just see everything as being really harsh. They see like the nurses and the doctors as just being almost kind of these figures of horror at times. And at first I thought it was like a really cold story, but then I realized that the viewpoint is from the children's viewpoint because they're scared, and they're seeing this as like the worst possible place because they're scared. But anyways, they join together. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they want to see this meteor shower that's happening, and so they like sneak out and they go to this observatory to watch it, and they just want to explore. And I really like this. I thought it was fantastic. Stu West, he's cool. A House by the Sea by P.H. Lee. I didn't really care for this one. This was a story talking about Ursula Le Guin's story, the Amla story. And I'm not even going to try to explain this one. It went over my head a little bit. Didn't really care for it. Basically, it was about where we put our marginalized people out on the fringes of society, things of that nature. But I didn't connect with it. Speaking of not connecting, we have Disconnect by Fran Wilde. I like this. You had to wrap your head around this one. Basically, this woman's joints travel in space, and her muscles like travel in space, and she wakes up and maybe something like missing in her leg, and she has to use like her mind and like sing to bring that joint back. It wanted to be a science fiction story, but it really is a fantasy story, because I mean, yeah. But it was really fun. I thought it made me think. Like, I read it, I thought, okay, that was okay. But a few days later, I was still thinking about that. And she is a professor, and she has to travel all through this city to get to her different classes to teach. And a lot of times she's late because of her disability. And at the same time, there's these individuals that are trying to get her to be in their studies and their testings because she has such a unique disability. And it just shows how much emotional labor these individuals have to go through with their disability, just because everyone wants to talk about it and have them involved in their studies and things. And I ended up really liking this, even though at the time I was like, about it. Thinking about it over time has really made me like it more. Okay, This Will Not Happen to You by Marissa Lingen. This was okay. It wasn't really a story. Basically, it's telling you, hey, these issues, these disabilities can happen to anybody. So treat people that have them with respect because they could be you. By degrees in dilatory, I don't know how to say that word. Time by S.L. It's the I. Dilatory. By S.L. Huang. And this is a reprint, but I really like this one. This was really a good story. Individual is getting an eye transplant, getting different eyes, and he's trying to figure out who he is with these new eyes. And it's really interesting. What I took away from it the most was that there is a community of people in this book that are all about being able to change their body however they want, and they protest, and they're all about activism. But this guy, even though he technically becomes one of them, he's like, just because I have this now doesn't mean that I have to join them and be part of their activism. And I thought that was really cool. I thought it was a great idea, and probably the thing I took away the most from that story. And the last thing was Listen by Karen Tidblack. And I didn't really care for this one. This one went over my head a little bit. This one it's weird. It's on like a different planet, and there's ambassadors, and they can only talk at certain times when the moon and the planet is at a certain angle. I don't know. I didn't get this one. The nonfiction in this was really good. There's a lot of nonfiction. So basically, the actual fiction is half the ebook, and the rest of the ebook, the other half, is all nonfiction. I read the things that were labeled nonfiction. They're really good. It's all about empathy, guys. Just put yourself in the position of other people and realize that the world is not built for them. The disabled people always have to struggle to be included in spaces because of access issues. And when you don't have the access to places, you're basically saying, hey, you're not wanted here. And that was a huge takeaway for me because I never really thought about it like that. If they can't get into a convention center, or they can't get into a church, or they can't get into a school, or they can't get into a mall, or they can't even go to the second level of a store, then they are basically saying, hey, we don't want your type of people here. And I didn't really understand that until I read these stories, and then I read the nonfiction. And it really opened my eyes to really look at the world and look and see, is this wheelchair accessible? So that was important for me. I thought that was really good. And probably the biggest thing I'll take away from this whole issue. I really like this issue. I highly recommend it. Please read this. Thanks for watching this entire video. It was a long one. I'll talk to you guys later.